So in this video, we're going to talk about Riverscape projects. And just to before we jump into the problem and the backstory for these, I'm just going to cut right to the chase on what a project is. A project is just a folder. So here's a brat project. And the folder may be organized in different ways, but in this one that has its inputs and there's, some rasters and some shapefiles, some intermediates and an output. And then the key thing it has is this project file, right? And the project file basically tells us what's in here and its history, okay? So one of the things that if we back up to Riverscape tools, that Riverscape tools need to do to be Riverscape compliant is they have to output they have to package up their stuff into projects. And this is to facilitate sharing. So I could send you a zip file of this, and you could unzip it, and you'd be able to work with that either in the model, and we'll talk about Rave, etc. etc. So the goal here is to make it easier to produce, curate, and organize the Riverscape analysis in the context of the inputs and intermediates that they were produced with, and foster transparency and reproducibility and sharing. So one of the most significant barriers that we find to effective collaboration and leveraging of all this hard work that we do as scientists is being able to access and share any of those tools. This thing, I don't know how many times I've heard this, just send me the data, is rarely actually that simple. And because one of the hallmarks of scientific rigor is reproducibility, we think that actually a standard should be that you package up and provide a Riverscape project for any case study, any analysis that you're reporting on in a paper. The Riverscape community desperately needs some standards and simple tools for sharing of data, and that's what we're trying to do here. This also makes it easier to visualize in GIS, and we'll show you that with Rave. It makes it easier to share and discover, and we'll talk about that when we get into warehouses. And it ultimately leads to more scalable analyses and interoperability between various Riverscape tools. So these Riverscape projects, what we find is for most of the tools that we have and most models, it's a couple hours to a day to sort of refactor them so that all of the read-write operations, like reading in inputs, writing intermediates, and writing outputs, the stuff that a tool or a model does, and then storing the metadata for that in here, it's just not that involved. Now the problem is that when we say we need metadata, that's something we can all sort of nod our head and go, oh yeah, metadata is helpful. But you're never going to do it. And so what we find is we have to refactor the tools so that they take the context in which something is read, something is written, etc., and do their best job to automatically populate that metadata. And if you want to think of this in a pretty simple terms, what we're interested in with Riverscape projects, this is not the place to make that point, is the who, right? The what, and the when. The where, if these are geospatial outputs, is implicit from the context of just looking at what that coverage is. The why is not the job of this sort of housekeeping exercise, but who did it, when they did it, and why, and what they did, right? I created this output from these three inputs, etc. That's what we're trying to capture. These XML projects, the project files, so this is what I sort of, I showed you an example of one right here. I'm just opening that up. Whoops. So this is Riverscape's Brat project in this particular example. And these things are actually reasonably easy to read. If you go through and look at them, there's some stuff about the project type, and then a little bit of metadata, and then the various realizations of what's in there is basically what they do. And so one of the things that this buys you is the ability to look at Riverscape projects in Rave. And so I will show you that in the next video on Rave.